Hello everyone. This dude and Olivine Mage, hello and welcome. And to Carter Dunlap over on YouTube, hello, I hope you're doing good too. Chakista Space Nerd, hey, Magistressa, Kieran, everyone, welcome. Oh man, it's real. As of this morning, it is finally here and done and existent. Under the constellations, hello, welcome. I finished the PowerPoint an hour ago. The PowerPoint content is real. It took us a while to get there. Raw the barrel, break out the champagne! I did also stop at the store and get myself some Amaretto and Frangelico, so those may be making an appearance later in the stream, depending on how late we go. Last minute assignment completion? You've been there. Yeah. Incredibly, last minute assignment completion on a deadline I assigned myself, and I don't think I've managed to be a year and a half late on many assignments before. Jerona7, thank you so much for the follow. Welcome on in. How are you doing today? So yeah. There's some backstory to today's stream, huh? Isn't there? So, folks who have been around for a while know that, I intended 2024 to be, the year of the weeb, is I believe what we termed it. Where the goal over the course of that year was to go over the entirety of Japanese history from the beginnings of human habitation up to the, pre-World War II. And then I got a job. I announced this in December of 2023, and at the end of January 2024, I moved for a job. And that kind of messed up all of the plans. But still, the idea being we would pick a game for every time period, we will go through some stuff, we do some learning together about it, because I don't know anything about, I hadn't done Japanese history in any amount of substance since high school. So, while I'm good, I'm pretty good at a lot of stuff. I figured we'd learn some stuff together, and it wouldn't be a big deal. We ran into a second snafu back in, June of 2024, which is that I realized that there are no games that actually dig into Heian Japan in any substance. The games that do all exclusively focus on, the Genpei War at the very, very, very end of the period. Now that's not very fun. I didn't really enjoy that. So, we realized we have to just do a presentation. We have to just figure it out. We have to do some pure history. No contemporary media. Don't worry about it. Let's just go. The problem with that is that in order to do a presentation, I need to actually know what the hell I'm talking about. How dare I get my dream job? I know, right? It's so awful. So, we kind of just got stuck. And then that project stalled out for about a year. And then we revived it. And now here we are. Finally, gonna do some PowerPoint content with a very, very short, somewhat detailed introduction to Heian Japan. Used to know way too much about Heian Japan, but I forgot most of it. This shall be interesting. Amazing. I will say, there's going to be a lot of things that we have, sort of gonna kind of run through at speed, light over, not talk about in detail. So anyone who is hoping to get my take on the literary merits of the, Genji Monogatari, no. Nah. Can't make me. You're gonna be disappointed. Like, nah. That thing is longer than War and Peace. I was not going to read it for this presentation, much less read it multiple times in order to have a coherent take for it. So, Murasaki Shikabu, I'm sorry, you're a brilliant writer. We ain't doing that today! So, there's going to be a lot of things that we pass over in fairly brief. But there's going to be a lot that I think is going to be really, really fun. A lot of really, really interesting things I figured out. So I am so excited. So yeah. I vote. Let's be real, we're all peasants and we resent Seishonagon for taking all our rice. More on that later. I have, in the presentation, I do have a, very short, incomplete list of things Seishonagon doesn't like. So, you know, this'll be great. This'll be absolutely grand. So, I guess as we hop in, a couple of additional housekeeping notes. One, sorry if I sound stuffy, it's because I'm stuffy. So, I'm going to try and keep my voice very kind of out of my nose, but if you hear some stuff in there, that's because there's some stuff in there. Because I live in the countryside, and it is corn harvesting season, and therefore there's so much dust in the air that I am constantly congested. Second, after we finish up here, this should take about 2 hours. After I finish up here, we will be killing the YouTube stream so that I can refill on drinks, and then we will be back with more Steam Next Fest historical game demos. There are a lot of historical game demos yet to get through, so we'll be live for a very long time today. So I hope you are all very excited, settled in, cozy here for the long haul. So, 2 YouTube streams just for the purpose of splitting out the VODs. But for now, we got ourselves some history, and we got ourselves a PowerPoint. So let's turn down the tunes, but let's not get rid of the tunes. And in fact, I notice I don't have the widget tracker there. There we go. Hello, Acleon. Welcome on in. How are you doing? You are so excited. Amazing. AC Esquire, you have parked your ox cart in a fashionable location. I love that for you. Zoe's girlfriend. Hello. Welcome. Let's do this. So, when are we? We are assuming no prior knowledge here, so the Heian period technically refers to the period between 794 and, depending on who you ask, 1185 or 1192 AD. If you say 1185, you do not think the Genpei War is part of the Heian period. If you think it is 1192, you think that Minamoto no Yoritomo, declaring himself Seitai Shogun, and establishing the first Bakufu, is correct. The PowerPoint does not get cut off the sides, the timeline simply bleeds off the edge of the screen. Because this timeline keeps going. So, this is correct. Gur periodization. Oh, Gur periodization. Have I mentioned that I loathe this, periodization? Have I mentioned this recently? Nobody ever considers the long Heian period, i.e. it stops when people stop calling the capital Heian-kyo. See, that's big brain right there. That's big brain. If you're gonna commit to bad periodization, commit to really bad periodization. So, this periodization really just refers to the time period in which administrative power was concentrated in the city of Heian-kyo. That's frickin' useless in terms of actually understanding anything about the period or what social structure is like. So I'm mad about it, and I'm going to stay mad about it for the entire rest of this presentation. However, this is a time period that really has way more sources and way more visibility going on than anything we've done up to this point. This is a time period that's super duper complex, has a lot of literature, has a vast amount of religious shifts, new sects, new everything, more detailed annals. For the Nara period, we had 2. Across the course of the Heian, we have like 8. Way more court intrigue, more fashion, more interaction with the outside world, sorta, kinda. More complicated family trees, more everything. So, this sucks. But that makes it interesting to talk about. There's a lot of detail. This PowerPoint is going to go through some of it. So, for the purposes of this, I am following some recent scholarship in identifying a shift sometime in the late 9th or early 10th century. So, identifying several different periods defined largely by how the central court interacted with the hinterland. So, the early Heian period, from the founding of the city up until sometime around 900, we have a very active imperial court, a very engaged imperial court that is meddling in the affairs of all of the provinces. This is supported by an extremely complicated bureaucracy derived from the Ritsurio system of the Nara period. It is highly bureaucratic, it is very slow to move, but has an awful lot going on. Then we get the mid-Heian, also known as the Fujiwara Regency period, from around 900 to around 1100, in which the imperial court becomes increasingly isolated, and the hinterland, the provinces, become more militarized, more privatized, and more independent and self-running administratively. And then the militarism and violence crescendos rapidly in the late 1000s and the course of the 12th century, culminating in the Genpei War at the end of the 1180s. The other core takeaway here is that... Hello, Winter. Yes. You can hear my cat from across the house because this is the loudest cat on the planet. Hi, buddy. We'll see if he jumps up on anything or if he just curls up at my feet. He's definitely going to do one of those things. But the other core takeaway here is that the Heian as a whole is going to be the start of all of the systems that are going to define the next 500 years of Japanese history. Yeah, there you are. So, let's start at the beginning with the creating of Heiankyo. If you remember from a year and a half ago, over the course of the 700s, the capital city for the Imperial Dynasty of Japan was the city of Nara. However, by the 780s, Nara was looking a little bit giga-cursed. We got angry spirits, we got former emperors who were coming back and haunting the place, we got epidemics, we got earthquakes. It sucks real bad. So, the Emperor Kanmu in 781 is like, alright, enough is enough. This place is inauspicious. We're moving. So, he originally selects what is now the city of Nagaoka, but it ran into even more bad omens. The construction got delayed. The lead architect got assassinated in a snowstorm. The city flooded halfway through being built. There was, like, out of, like, the 10 years that are trying to build it, 6 of them were critical famine in Japan. So, you know, the vibes were rancid. The juju was non-existent. And so, before the city of Nagaoka-kyo was finished being built, they just left. They just gave up, and they moved off to the northeast to the city of Heian, which is a little bit off of the shores of Lake Biwa and under the shadow of Mount Hiei. Right, Hiei is on the other side of the lake, but you could clearly see it, and it was sort of the prominent reason why you're selecting that location, because the direction northeast is bad juju. Like, definitionally, under Hosso Buddhism, the dominant sect at the time, the direction of the northeast was just always bad. So, putting a sacred mountain to the northeast shields the city from all the bad vibes of that direction. Problem solved. Hopefully no monastic orders on that mountain bullies us. Foreshadowing is a literary device. Let's talk about the capital city. The capital city, like all early Japanese capital cities, was based on the Chinese capital city. Right, this is based on ancient Chang'an, now Xi'an, where you have a very square city with an extremely wide central boulevard, Suzaku Avenue, running straight up the center of the city, up to the palace compound. This city is big, right? At over 5 kilometers north to south and 4.5 kilometers east to west. This is a very large city for the period that could theoretically support a very large population. Unfortunately, for them, it never grows to fit that population in the Heian period. And so, the southwest corner, it rapidly depopulates. By the 900s, this is farmland inside the city limits. So, while modern Kyoto still follows this grid, it undergoes a lot of evolutions in a variety of disasters, depopulation events, fires, etc. And so, it's only loosely tied to this grid. So, but yes, right, this map has a couple of marks for kind of ongoing things. Oh yeah, it could support a theoretical population of like 250,000 people. It never does this. Or, well, it doesn't do this in the Heian period. I had a hard time finding an actual good population estimate, but it's probably under 100,000. Which still makes it far and away the largest city in the empire, but, that's okay. So, let's talk about once it gets built, the imperial court all moves there, and most of the families that were important in that period all move with it. The one group that does not move with it is the Buddhist monks. One of the speculated reasons motivating the Emperor Kanmu's move is that he was getting a bit spooked about how strong Todaiji monastery was getting. Understandably so, because Todaiji is very large and very powerful. And so, moving away from there certainly weakens, though it does not fully cripple, Todaiji and the hereditary Buddhist temple's power. So, the imperial court preserves most of its features from the previous century, specifically its organization under the Ritsuryo system. The Ritsuryo system basically defined two main administrative branches of government: worship and state. So state handles all the regular bureaucracy, and worship handles morality, culture, divination, etc. Within that, there's an enormous amount of complexity that is not worth going through, but there are like 30 different ranks within each department. Everything from musicians to diviners to provincial administrators to court retainers to retainers of retainers to butlers to everything had like very heavily codified positions, and everyone was in name appointed by the emperor. Additionally, so the other big thing the Ritsuryo system does is it provides a very strict census of the peoples of Japan and all of the towns, villages, and farmlands. And in consequence, it says the emperor owns everything and leases it to the people who are working that land. So there should be a periodic, originally every couple of years, by the time of the Emperor Kanmu, every 12 years, a census that revises the annual taxation to reflect the population and the realities of how the land leasing is working. There is one important exception to this. Even in the Nara period, there is an exemption for previously unfarmable land. If someone clears it, they can own that land outright for a period of time, within a tax exemption or tax reduction. Put a pin in that, we'll need it later. Next up, right? When we say that the emperor owned all land in Japan, we should be very clear he does not own all land in what we consider Japan. Right? So there's Lake Biwa. There's Mino Province. Somewhere around here, the empire's borders just end. Right? Kyushu, part of the imperial land. Honshu, half of it is. But this entire section off to the east and north is not in the 8th century part of the Empire of Japan. And Hokkaido, we don't talk about Hokkaido yet. So, coinciding with the move to Heian, we have, more than like anywhere else, a organized, militarized campaign to expand the borders of Japan. Specifically, the goal is to push the other peoples that were living all up here, the Emishi or Ezo, get rid of them. Incorporate them into the empire if you can, kill them if you have to, but get rid of them. And so for the entirety of the early Heian, you actually have the development of professional soldiery as a career for continual campaigns against the Ezo. We should talk more in detail about them. These are often called the indigenous peoples of Tohoku and Hokkaido, but like our source record for them is not good because we're describing them. All of our sources are coming from the Yamato Empire. So our best guess is that these are a descending culture of the Jomon people, just like the Empire is, but they had far less penetration from Korea with the Yayoi material culture imported from Korea into Kyushu and Honshu. So, these preserve sort of Jomon material culture and housing a little bit better, and develop their own cultural space. They're often described as hairy and tattooed, two things that the Heian court thought was ridiculous and terrible, and how dare they? But honestly, it's hard to know a lot for sure about them. Right? There aren't a lot of widely agreed to be Ezo burials for us to do genetic analysis. But what there is, based on a couple of hundred burials, suggests that there isn't really a strong population-level genetic difference between the, Heian Japanese and the Ezo. So, any description of hairiness, of tattoos, of dark skin, etc., is actually just cultural custom being projected onto them. So, yes, they have beards, where having shitty little mustaches was considered more stylish in Heian Japan. Yes, they don't have hats, where Heian Japan wanted incredibly tall lacquer hats all the time. Yes, they wear furs, where delicately patterned silks were preferred. But, a lot of... This is not a genetic level difference. This is a cultural level difference that is being projected onto the Ezo and used to justify their subjugation. Yeah! Worth noting that Amishi is a name applied to by the court to a variety of people in that region. And in later records, they're shrimp barbarians. Shrimp barbarians! So, we did just get ads, so we will pause very briefly. We will pause very briefly for the ads to tick on. Which is a great time. Everyone tell me what you're drinking. I am having more coffee. Coffee. All right. Ooh, a strawberry sparkling water. Ooh. Cripper. Fantastic choice. Fantastic choice. Zoe, great shout on the, to your girlfriend for the comparison to Roman descriptions of the barbarian peoples. While we don't have anything quite comparable to, Caesar's descriptions of the Gauls, there is plenty of similarities in how they're justifying subjugation. Alright, welcome back from the ads. So, a little bit more on the practicals. The Emperor Kanmu appoints the High General for the subjugation of the Shrimp Barbarians. And that is, or in Japanese, the Sei Taishogun. Put a pin in that name. We'll need it later. But the consequence of this, basically, is that in the Nara period, while imperial courtiers and nobles were expected to be able to be trained in weapons and armaments, actual fighting forces were ad hoc, summoned for a campaign, and then dismissed. The subjugation campaigns against the Amishi create a professional, elite, lifelong soldiers, and a body of regularly marshaled conscript fighters who are going to be distributed around the empire very quickly. So, we have something much closer to a standing army, and is the direct predecessor to the structures of daimyo, samurai, and ashigaru that are going to show up in a few hundred years. We're not there yet. We should not use Ashigaru as a way to understand our conscripts of the Heian period, but we're working in that direction already in the year 800. Also, sending people to the Kanto, sending people from Heiankyo into the Kanto Plain or up into Tohoku was a great way to get rid of people who were causing problems. We'll come back to this in just a moment, but banishment, right, being physically distant from the imperial court was a death sentence for you politically. So, it was a great way to deal with problematic people, including upstart, distant members of the imperial family. Just send them out. Send them out to go subjugate some barbarians, so then you don't have to worry about them for like 10 years. This works great. Don't look up north where there's a new, basically independent city being formed. What? No. It's unimportant. Don't look at that. Don't look. Foreshadowing is a literary device. But of course, as we are expanding out here, right this way, it's not like Japan is isolated. Japan is part of a much bigger world. So, at the start of the Heian period, we still have some important players, right? We have the Tang Dynasty as the big guy in charge. Though, everyone's aware of it, the Tang Dynasty is buckling. Right? The Tang Dynasty over the course of the 800s is racked by civil unrest, repeatedly, constantly, nearly collapses in 850, rallies, fully collapses in the early 900s. So, they're weaker than they used to be. But we also have Korea with Shilla and Balhae. So, they're much more present, much more common, much more present. Alright. Japan, like everyone, sees the Tang Dynasty buckling and starts to say, hey, we're equal to them. We're not subservient to them. We're equal to them. The Emperor is the center of the universe. Japan is the greatest spot to ever be created. And so, early on, there are regular diplomatic missions to Chang'an, known as Kentoshi. The last one of those occurs in 838. There's another one planned in 892, but it gets cancelled. We don't worry about it. At the same time, you know, by the way, ignore Wikipedia's incorrect here. In 900, we cannot speak of the Ainu. We're getting closer. We'll get to the Ainu soon. But we cannot speak about the Ainu yet. They're not an identifiable culture group. So, the other thing, though, is that even though diplomacy ceases, throughout this whole period, there is enormous amount of elite appetite for Chinese and Korean goods. This creates a rampant smuggling around Kyushu, and this kind of freaks out the imperial court, because the imperial court also has this appetite, but wants to be in charge of the distribution of Chinese and Korean goods. So, they establish, in northern Kyushu, in Hakata Bay, they established Dazaifu, and make that the primary access point to the entirety of the Japanese archipelago. So, right, this makes them vulnerable to piracy, as pirates from Shilla attacked Dazaifu multiple times, including in 869. But they still use that port as the primary access point to bring in foreign goods, where the imperial officials would travel from Heian to Dazaifu, buy up everything, and then resell it to the provincial nobility of Japan. So in order to help enforce this, they take some of those conscript soldiers who were trained out in the Kanto, known as Sakimori, and end up stationing them on Dazaifu, on the island of Iki, and on the island of Tsushima. More on that later. They get disbanded by the end of the 800s, citing the genuine hardship of trying to provide for fairly significant numbers of conscript soldiers from the other side of the country. Still, there is an enormous appetite for foreign goods and learning, and so we immediately see a lot of consequences as ideas and materials get brought over from China and Korea into Japan. Chinese is the lingua franca of the court at this point. Chinese writing is the lingua franca of the court. They seem to be speaking in Old Japanese, but they're writing in Chinese for now. So, we should probably talk about that whole religion thing, because one of the most visible imports in the early Heian from China are new religious sects. So, we're starting to get a clearer picture on this whole Buddhism thing. More on that in a moment, Space Nerd. More on that in a moment. So, the Kentoshi envoys are responsible for the creation of two incredibly important Buddhist sects in Japan. The first one is Tendai, brought over by the monk Saicho, which established itself on Mount Hiei. So Tendai is a literal borrowing of Tiantai, which is the center for the Chinese sect of this Buddhist movement. So Hiei becomes the equivalent for Tendai Buddhism. It is deeply, deeply esoteric. I do not understand any of it. Do not ask me. But what's perhaps most important is that Tendai Buddhism gives birth by the middle of the 10th century to Pure Land, or Amida Buddhism, which becomes immensely, immensely popular and exerts a big influence on Zen in a couple hundred years. Oh, it's simple. You go do rituals and then things happen. Fabulous. That really narrows it down so much, AC. The other main esoteric sect is Shingon, established by the monk Kukai. Now, Kukai is interesting because he's an absolute frickin' nobody until the Empress at the time gets sick, and the Tendai monks can't cure her. And then he rocks up and says, I got a new sutra. Let me get to work. Is successful at curing her, becomes her favorite courtier, and then becomes wildly influential. To the point where everyone's, like, really pissed off at him because, like, he's too influential for being a fucking nobody. So, yeah. Yeah, Shingon, unlike Tendai Buddhism, which is very elite-focused, Shingon comes to say, oh yeah, salvation for actually everybody. What is this Confucian social station? I don't care about it. Salvation for everybody. Amazingly, Shingon does not make enormous inroads into non-elite populations, despite promising that. Amida Buddhism is much more successful. Anyway, Both of these sects come to establish their own large temple networks. Tendai Buddhism has the most famous one, with the temple at Enryakuji. Enryakuji on Mount Hiei is a big fucking deal, and becomes the place where the imperial family will go do most of its rituals, and it exerts enormous power networks across the entirety of Japan, including in Shinto shrines and in Buddhist temples from Kyushu to Tohoku. It's an unimportant temple. It definitely doesn't get burned down by a nobody named Oda Nobunaga. I don't know what you're talking about. What now? It'll never be relevant. Don't worry about. Don't look at the Muromachi period. Why are you looking at the Muromachi period? This is the Heian period. We also, however, that's not like the only Buddhist sects that exist. Exoteric, more easily understood, well-known things. I say that as if I understand Hoso Buddhism anymore. He says not understanding any of it. But these are more established, less kind of secretive sects with a little bit more general penetration into the culture. For instance, Hoso, which is centered in Nara at Todaiji. However, you do still see the importation of various lower Buddhist deities, such as the 11-headed Kannon. The 11-headed Kannon is the most popular deity in Japanese Buddhism in this period. Near the end of the Heian, it'll be supplanted by the 1,000-armed Kannon. But, yeah, so there actually, like, so many temples have statues and reliquary practices for the 11-headed Kannon. Todaiji continues to be very powerful and relevant across social ranks for the entirety of the Heian, so even though Tendai and Shingon get all of the, like, accolades, study, and fame, we shouldn't write out the exoteric sects as uninfluential or as not power players in their own right. And then lastly, we have Shinto. We still can't really talk about Shinto as a thing, and we, won't be able to fully talk about Shinto as a thing until the Meiji period, but we're at least able to identify a group of practices that sort of vaguely are starting to develop into something that is recognizable as Shinto. In particular, we're looking at local individual worship of local individual spirits, mostly Inari. I'm looking at you. Why are you like this? At shrines. We also see an increasing emergence of aesthetic components, with like mountain hermits or Yamabushi, and Shugendo, starting to be something identified in scholarship in this period. Yippee. We also do start to see the influence of the Shinto spirit in Buddhist practice and folklore. In particular, the use of Buddhist ritual as a solution to angry Shinto, we're just going to call it that for convenience, we'll put the scare quotes, spirits, or onryo. This codifies within the imperial court in Onmyodo. Onmyodo literally translates to the path of yin and yang, which is the training and the office for professional divination. Originally, this consists of 6 positions, including Tenmon Hokase and Sakyo no Kami, though at various times, someone may have multiple of those positions at once. The short way of understanding this is that literally everything is auspicious or inauspicious. And the job of the diviner and the government office is to determine when and whether a particular action should be taken based on foretelling the future of when is and is not auspicious. So they become exorcists, doctors, fortune tellers, astrologers, and more, and help organize public prayer. As the time period goes on, their story is able to grow, and they are able to do more and more traditionally what we would conceive of as magical things. So, I've got a picture here of the most famous onmyoji, Abe no Seimei. Now, Abe no Seimei is a weird guy, as far as I can tell. Because in his lifetime, the thing that seems to make him famous is the fact that he just doesn't die. Like, he lives to be like 85, with no significant periods of illness in his entire life. Life expectancy in the Heian is, if you make it to 55, you're old. If you make it to 65, you're ancient. So a bunch of stories, emerge, about him that really are just based on the fact that he must have really good onmyo, because he just doesn't get sick. Is that destroyed by high baby and childhood death, though? No! I already accounted for that. Life expectancy, excluding infant mortality, is in the 50s. More on that later. Good onmyo vibe. So there's one, but, right, even the stories that show up later for Abe no Seimei are kind of, they're amusing in that he's just the pettiest motherfucker on the planet. So there's one story, where he gets into a fight with one of his colleagues at the bureau. And to prove which one is the better onmyoji, they have a challenge. The challenge is to identify what's in the box. So another courtier will put something in a box. They need to say what it is and how many it is. Abe no Seimei's opponent, whose name escapes me, bribes the guy to put 15 oranges into the box. And he goes, oh, there's 15 oranges in there. And Abe no Seimei, having such good onmyo, is able to say, look into the box spiritually and say there's 15 oranges. And he's like, motherfucker, he cheated. So, the solution is to transform the 15 oranges into 15 rats. And Abe no Seimei says, there are 15 rats in there. He's like, what? Why? How would we get 15 rats into the box? That's deeply unwell. And then they open it up and lo and behold, 15 rats come piling out. And they're like, wow, Abe no Seimei has such good onmyo. And it's like, what the heck, guys? You just stress that in the Ashiya Dolmen Ochi Kagami version of the story, Seimei is like a teenager. And, right, it's incredible to me, because that is such an impressive feat of divination and magic, used to transform oranges into rats, just to prove that he's cool like that. Onmyo is a very serious field. And this is just what it's like. Magic practitioners in this period use their talents to do petty bullshit. So, later in the Heian period, under the Fujiwara Regency period, the governmental aspect of their work actually kind of stops happening. because individual courtiers are too busy submitting requests to say, can you make my personal life more auspicious? Or, I got a cold, can you exorcise some demons about it? And, yeah, that's just a thing. That's just what it's like. So, that's all we'll talk about on Myoto. But, yeah, they're incredibly influential at the court, and they are simultaneously, doctors, exorcists, fortune tellers, etc., etc. And so everyone in the imperial court comes to very, very, very heavily rely on them. You're listening to this to try and fall asleep, but this is ridiculous. It is ridiculous. It's so funny. I love this period so much because everyone's the worst. Alright. Let's actually talk about the Fujiwara here, because the Fujiwara are kind of important. So, in between, like, the 850 and, like, 910 or so, the Fujiwara family, kind of perfects something that's been going for a long time. So, the Fujiwara family actually showed up, like, way back in our last thing when we were talking about the Nara period. Nakatomi no Kamatari, took the name Fujiwara, after, helping save the imperial family back in the 600s. And so these are his descendants. They are the most powerful courtier family. They were based in Yamashiro province, where Heian is located, before the Emperor Kanmu moves Heian there. And in fact, he moves to Yamashiro because the Fujiwara are there, and the Fujiwara promised to help him against Todaiji. But by the end of the 800s, they kind of set up a system. A Fujiwara woman would marry the emperor. The previous emperor would be forced to abdicate, while their son is super duper young. The new emperor's father-in-law, then, would serve as Sessho, or regent, when the emperor was a child, and Kanpaku, or the chief manager, when the emperor was an adult. This guarantees that the head of the Fujiwara family will functionally be in charge, period, for the emperor's entire life, and you will lather, rinse, repeat every generation. This lasts until the early 1100s, so they have a good, 200 years and some change of this regency rule. So, who we've got here is Fujiwara no Michinaga, the most successful Fujiwara regent, and immediately after he dies, some of the cracks start to show. So, here's the full breakdown of what he's doing. Officially, he's the third in command in the imperial bureaucracy, the Minister of the Right in 995, the Minister of the Left from 996 until 1017. He resigns from that position when his son-in-law comes to the throne. So he's the regent Sessho in 1016, the highest position, the Daijo Daijin, or Chancellor, in 1017, and he retires in 1019 at the age of 50, and lives for another 9 years in a Buddhist monastery. Unofficially, he's father-in-law to 4 different emperors in that time, and wildly influential at court for 24 years, after he backstabbed his 16-year-old nephew when he was 24. So, beginning in 1001, for the next 15 years, his estate is called Mido Kanpaku. So, or actually, he is called Mido Kanpaku. Mido is the name of his house, so he's the regent ruling from the estate at Mido. So, everyone knew he was in charge. Everyone knew he was the most powerful man at court by a lot. Also, traditionally, wives don't move out of the house, so imperial princes are raised in the Fujiwara household, and you don't say no to your grandpa and uncle. Exactly. right? So the Fujiwara family sets themselves up all across this, and most of the disputes of the Middle Heian are between Fujiwara and imperial family members, increasingly pissing each other off and getting into minor skirmishes about it. So Michinaga was a well known figure in the court. Both Murasaki Shikibu and Sei Shonagon are alive during his lifetime, and record him being, frankly, kind of lecherous and also kind of a jokester for that whole period. Sei Shonagon in particular is quite disappointed when he retires. But like I said, he made it to 50 and then lived until almost 60. So, good for him. Oh, he was hardly the worst at the court. He was hardly the worst of the people Sei Shonagon talks about. But like, by my standards, yikes. Yikes. So, the other important thing, by the way, put a pin in this for later. In order to ensure that the emperor wouldn't get any exciting upstart ideas, they would force the reigning emperor to retire in their 30s. Put a pin in that. Also worth noting that Murasaki Shikibu is Fujiwara no Kaoruko. Yeah. So, she is also part of this, so obviously has some things. Anyway, this dude, thank you so much for gifting a tier 1 sub to AC Esquire. Super duper appreciated. Alright, so, the social order in this period, the big takeaway is that as the Fujiwara family exerts its more and more control, imperial authority narrows. And so it becomes more and more worried about Heian Kyo, and less interested in everyone else. We just got ads over on Twitch though, so we'll give it a couple moments here. And in the meantime, folks who did not get ads can try and enjoy this a list of a few things that are bad. Alright, just a little bit longer. Hey chat. Spin a cat if you can hear me. Just because I want to see a spinning cat. Spin this cat for no reason. Look at them go. Look at them spin. Remember, if you're on Twitch, you too can spin a cat for the cost of free if you have Amazon Prime. I don't know why I'm shilling for Twitch Prime during the ad break when subscribers have ad-free viewing, but here we are. Incredible. Alright, welcome back everyone. You're also spinning, in spirit. If you have a cat IRL and want to spin them, I won't stop you. I recommend bothering your beasts. So, right, as the Imperial Court gets more and more focused on itself and on the culture of itself, we see a narrowing. So, provincial governors in this period are famously greedy and abusive. We'll see a case of that later. But the Imperial Court becomes less and less responsive to those complaints and less capable of dealing with it. However, you'll observe if you have people being forced into retirement in their 30s, and you have imperial families, branches, all intermarrying, all in the same area, you end up with an awful lot of people related to the emperor alive at the same time. By the way, thank you, Wolfie, for the gift sub to Jens, so that Jens can spin the cats on Twitch as well as in real life. And thank you for starting the type trade. It's very sweet of you all. If you want to help join in to unlock some bonus emotes, this is a great time to do so. Prime subs do help with that. You can subscribe for free. So, the Imperial family comes up with this solution, which is every once in a while we'll just, like, look at everyone who's more than, like, fourth cousin or something, and we'll just cut them off. They're no longer allowed to be part of the Imperial family. And so, when they get cut off, they will often get shipped out to Kanto to go deal with some barbarians, and given one of two names: Taira and Minamoto. Notably, multiple families from multiple waves of pruning the Imperial family were given the name Taira and Minamoto. So, not everyone who is named Taira is related to everyone else who is named Taira. And not everyone who is named Minamoto is related to everyone else who's named Minamoto. The family trees in this period are an absolute frickin' nightmare. It is the worst. What is deeply, deeply annoying is that those nightmarish family trees all matter a lot. So, because with everyone in the same place, in what is a very large but also very small city, personality is everything. And being able to navigate increasingly arcane social nonsense is very, very, very important. So, people's careers could and did fall apart for no reason more egregious than they wore the wrong color outfit for the season. It is so annoying, and, like, there are cases where, you know, someone has a social faux pas, and then the Emperor wanders around playing a song on his flute about how much you sucked. You tied the wrong sort of tree to the poem you sent to your lover? Banishment to Dazaifu. Sorry. Right, let's see if I can actually find it. It's, Sei Shonagon writes about it at one point, where there's a, where literally the Emperor, plays an insulting song about a courtier, because the courtier had made one faux pas and someone made a song about it. And it's, the Emperor seems like a sweet kid. Like, he's barely not a teenager when he's doing that. So he's just having fun. But, ouch, imagine being a respectable courtier, and the rumor gets to you that the Emperor himself wandered over to his mother's apartments and played a mean song about you on his flute. I too hate it when my hat is so tall I bang it against the doorframe. Yeah. Yeah. So, to give you a hint as to how many things can go wrong, here is an incomplete list, according to Sei Shonagon, of things that are bad. When you're trying to leave and someone just won't shut up. When you're trying to write and your hair falls onto the ink stick and now you have ink in your hair. When the deeply overworked Onmyoji dares to acknowledge that he's tired. Know-it-alls. I need you all to understand Sei Shonagon is such a fucking know-it-all. Old people trying to warm up their hands. Drunkenness. Envying something else. A baby crying. Crows. Dogs. When the person you invited over for an affair starts snoring. When the person you invite over for an affair has too tall of a hat and he bangs it on the ceiling in the morning. Mosquitoes. Carriages that creak even a little bit. When someone else is telling a story and you chime in with, hang on, didn't this also happen? Mice. Just in general. Children. Just in general. Talking about your ex. All the time. Sneezing. As sneezing isn't normal. I never sneeze. Fleas. Not closing the door when you leave. The husbands of nursemaids. When you talk to someone and you do not use the right honorifics if they're better to you than you. If you are a higher social class than someone and you are speaking to a servant and you use any honorifics whatsoever. When you have a bad vibe about the person and then you're proven right. If you wear white while your hair is not perfectly... Well, she literally describes it as ugly while you have ugly hair, but like while your hair isn't perfectly coiffed. If you have bad handwriting, especially if you're using nice paper. If you're poor in the winter. If you're pregnant well over 25. If you're old and eat anything. If you're poor and wear the color red pants. There's also a bit where she makes fun of a Buddhist monk for pretending to be onmyoji. Yeah. This is a very, very incomplete list. She also, one of the things she hates is when someone speaks ill of other people. Do you know how much of this book is her speaking ill of other people? Rest in peace, I should have gone. You would have loved Blue Sky. Oh, she is a champion poster. I need you to understand. She would have fucking thrived on Twitter. No, Elin, don't say that. That's not okay. Remember, this is 1,000 years ago. This is 1,000 years ago. So, no, you can't say, oh, Japan's so messed up. This period is deeply unwell in a lot of ways. And it produces some great literature. Seriously, no. Read this book. It is so fucking fun. Oh, no. See, Magistressa, Sei Shonagon is notable for being the one whose most detailed gossip diary survives, because she tells us she definitely did not intend for this ever to be published. Yeah, trust. But the picture she paints and the bits of other diaries that survive suggest that really everyone's like this. The entire elite culture seems to be pretty well reflected by who Sei Shonagon is as a person. So, yeah. Why is there not a Pillow Book visual novel? Because it isn't an organized narrative. It is a non-chronological series of random notes. But there are some great scenes in it. So, with this social order, right, there is a lot of influence placed on poetic, musical, and fashion skills. Art skill and the arts equals skill in morality equals skill at governance. So, right. At the same time, we see the basically collapse of the Ritsuryo system that persisted in the early Heian. That completely collapses. There stop being super systematic censuses. A lot of the titles of court positions from the Ritsuryo system persist, but they're kind of completely meaningless. They're now just hereditary titles that you compete for, and you see an increasing focus on estates. In turn, this is like the direct formation of private wealth management and the samurai, but in turn, you get some awesome culture out of it. And Elin, you're okay. it happens. But yeah, let's not do some essentializing here, even comically, because this is a super interesting period in a lot of ways. At the center of the collapse of the Ritsuria system is the estate, or the Shoen. This is first established in the 8th century with the first weakening of the Ritsurio system. Basically, how it worked originally is that if you cleared a land that was previously non-arable, and you made it that you could farm it, it could be passed down tax-free for 3 generations before it could be reverted to imperial ownership. Gradually, this 3 generations part gets stopped, and so it's just, if you clear land, it's yours, congratulations, have fun. And by the 900s, due to legal loopholes, peasants could give leased lands to nobles who had estates, and they'd absorb it into that land, and suddenly you have a manor that is completely tax-free. And Ryakuji looks at that and says, oh, that's free money, and so they basically just literally own the entirety of Mount Hiei as their estate. Oops. So, imperial tax revenue falls off a frickin' cliff, and in return, provincial governors and manor holders start to accumulate massive amounts of wealth. Now, these manor owners would largely live in Heian and appoint someone to manage their lands on their behalf. But that means that you have like 4 layers of middlemen who are all skimming revenue off of that land and siphoning it into personal wealth. This will have lots and lots of consequences, but basically, this ownership of provincial land allows establishment of power bases and semi-urbanized communities outside of Heian that can be leveraged for the purposes of doing violence. Samurai, if you are not part of the hereditary aristocracy, the best way to make a name for yourself was to get yourself a shoen, build up a bunch of money, and then show up with a couple hundred guys. And this is where we get samurai. Samurai are not part of the hereditary nobility of Japan. They emerge in the mid-Heian period, right around 900, out of the 2 polar factors of assigning courtiers to subjugate barbarians and independent wealth generation from private estates. How bad did the government fund suffer from this? Extraordinarily badly. The Fujiwara family, their personal finances, basically prop up the imperial government by the end of the 900s. And they will continue to do that. So, and after they decline, the Taira's personal finances will prop up the imperial government. Is manor being used here in the same way as in a European feudal context? Actually, yes. To me, this seems intensely similar to European medieval manorialism. Because the other thing, right, instead of the government apparatus being, bureaucratically in charge of administering everything, the imperial government's solution to problems was to assign a courtier with the expectation that they would personally finance the job that they were given, and they would recoup that in communal prestige. And so, the interpersonal relationship between the court and the manor, and the people administering both of those, becomes the primary apparatus of government. And the ability to leverage familial feuds, the ability to leverage discontentment, and manipulate people into agreeing to take on things that are financially bad for them is how you did governance. So we'll talk about this in a little bit with Taira no Masakado in a few slides, but like that's how you solve that problem. So yeah, it's intensely similar to European feudal manorialism. And actually, I was surprised at how similar it was when I was doing research for this. So, let's revisit this question of what's happening on the edges. Because Heian-kyo is a big thing. But it's not the only thing. That's way later, Elin. Like, we are 800 years before the Shinsengumi. So, like, we have to be looking at things happening more than 500 years in the future, for, any of that. We're still looking at, like, early medieval. So, like the direction, that's too long durée. I love being long durée, that's too long durée. So hey, outside of Heian-kyo, we end up with two really important administrative centers in the Middle Heian. Dazaifu and Hiraizumi. So remember how I said if you banished people to the Kanto to go subjugate some barbarians, you did have to worry about them? About that. So, the Fujiwara family, not that Fujiwara family, establishes a city on the extreme northern coast of Tohoku called Hiraizumi. This family, helpfully called the Northern Fujiwara, the Fujiwara branch in charge of the Kanpaku is also called the Northern Fujiwara, but it's not that one. Don't worry about it. Names are hard. They establish basically their own subsidiary, like, client kingdom at Hiraizumi. They marry into the there are Emishi chieftains that they marry into. But they basically preserve or are culturally identical. But the entire Tohoku is basically administered independently from Hiraizumi. They'll be important again later. Don't worry about it. Meanwhile, Dazaifu is also I am using Ivan Morris's 1991 translation. If there's a more because it's the one I could find in physical copy. If there's a more recent translation, I would not get an older one than this, but if there is a younger one might be more readable. But yeah, Dazaifu also is used, according to Heian-kyo, Dazaifu is a political death sentence. Like, there are multiple stories of a good and well-loved noble courtier being manipulated by the Fujiwara family into getting banished to Dazaifu. And they become an ascetic and die of heartbreak while praying constantly towards Heian-kyo. In practice, Dazaifu remains extremely important, but gains a lot of flexibility in how it solves problems. Because there is still an enormous demand for foreign material in Japanese elite culture, though they will not admit it. And as such, you continue to have huge problems of piracy and smuggling. So in the 990s, you have piracy from Koryo the Korean kingdom that replaces the Shilla, and from the Jurchens in 1019. There were earlier rounds of piracy in the early 9th century, and in order to solve that, Dazaifu constantly had to send envoys to the imperial court asking for authorization to do a round of conscription to station more people on the islands of Iki and Tsushima. And the imperial court would say yes, and replace whichever administrator they thought was responsible for not adequately dealing with the problem, route more people over, and deal with all of that work. For these later ones, Dazaifu just goes and does it. So, the garrisons on the islands of Iki and Tsushima are managed directly from Dazaifu, and the administrator of Dazaifu is the most powerful man in Kyushu. Period. Now, the chief administrator in Dazaifu may not be the provincial governor of Dazaifu. That person might still be in Heian. This might be the second or third principal assistant to the governor of Dazaifu. But whoever is the highest ranking authority actually in the city is the most powerful man on Kyushu, and is actually doing a lot of the work to try and deal with these crises. And in turn, is siphoning off an awful lot of material for themselves, because they basically set the terms of trade. This informal personal connection of whoever happens to be on site at the time is also closely tied to diplomatic envoys, which are very informal. Officially, there are no diplomatic envoys outside of Japan in this period. Informally, there absolutely are people traveling to Koryo, people traveling to the southern Song, people traveling all sorts of places. Oftentimes, these are tied to religion. And so someone will travel nominally on pilgrimage to Tiantai, and then also happen to stop in and talk to the Chinese emperor to get authorization to do stuff, and trade texts, and get diplomatic gifts that they're going to send back to their family members who may or may not be Fujiwaras. They're Fujiwaras. So, yeah, it's all very ad hoc, very informal. The Imperial court claims to be in charge of stuff, they're not practically in charge of stuff. What are some of the great works of beneficial achievements that came from this time period? Well, I'm glad you asked. Welcome to... Chang'an's defunct at this point. This is Nanjing. Southern Song in the early 1100s. Welcome to elite culture. Because this period sucks so much, but the consequence of this deep internal focus... actually... AC, there was one diplomatic envoy I read about where the guy wanted to go to Chang'an until someone actually pointed out where Chang'an was on the map, and he was like, never mind, maybe I'll just go, like, somewhere nearby. So, we do not have time to get into all of the cultural stuff that happens in this period, but in a brief rundown of some of the things, we get so much language development, including, in the 900s, the development of katakana as a writing system. So, basically, right, kanji, Chinese writing, is used by men in public for the court. Katakana is used in the back rooms of the court by women to compose other forms of poetry. So, right? Female literacy in the period is overall still low, but among the imperial court and its surrounding communities, relatively high. And the expectation is that they would be well versed in a lot of different stuff. And so they developed their own writing system, which is katakana. Sonia, good to see you. You also see the development of waka poetry, and incredibly sophisticated poetic charms. Oftentimes, this poetry is focused around the theme of ephemerality, or mono no aware. So, a classic theme is, of course, the sakura petals falling in early March. You see the development of court music. You see some of the most fabulous works of literature in human history. So, right, travel diaries as sort of fictionalized accounts of various pilgrimages become extremely popular. Poetic and historical compilations become popular. The recording of folk tales occurs inside annals alongside serious historical events. And you get the two most famous works, Murasaki Shikibu's Genji Monogatari and Sei Shonagon's Pillow Book. Right? Fun fact, these two lived at the same time. Additional fun fact, these two hated each other. Both of their diaries mention the other one in exclusively negative terms. Sei Shonagon thought that Murasaki Shikibu was stuck-up, pretentious, and not as good of a writer as she was getting praised for. And Murasaki Shikibu thought that Sei Shonagon was a show-off, clever, but incredibly annoying. They were both right. They were absolutely both correct in their assessment of the other one. We once again are in ads, though, so we will pause very briefly before having a very, very short wander into the Tale of Genji. Again, I am not going to summarize the Tale of Genji because it is longer than War and Peace, and I was not about to read that for the purposes of a Twitch stream presentation. You know? Couple more seconds here of ads, so everyone, if you have not stretched, remember that you are leaning forward and so are shrimping your own neck. What? Was I talking to myself there? So, welcome back from the ads. So, the Tale of Genji. Summary. Guy fucks around and finds out. Yeah, but it takes 75 years. Across 4 generations. Of a guy fucking around and finding out. But it is, kind of regarded as human history's first vernacular psychological novel. It is extraordinarily long and extraordinarily rich and cares so much about the internal psychology of its characters. As soon as it was published, it was incredibly popular, and there are accounts of literally a young woman, not super elite, in Heian being ridiculously excited when her grandmother manages to get her a copy of the Tale of Genji. Oh, like, it was published in about 70 volumes. So, uh, like, incredibly culturally significant, published right in the early 1000s, and by 1100, recognized as the masterpiece that it is. We also see court music develop as an art form. We see enormously complex ritual spaces developing in this period. And so there is so much. Yeah, gagaku. And the development of the relevant instruments, such as the flute, the shakuhachi. It's very, very cool. There is so much exciting. We cannot get into all of it because we will be here all day. But do spend some time exploring. Quick note, Genji is another pronunciation of Minamoto. Yup. Didn't you also say Watanabe is a pronunciation of Minamoto? But yes. The Prince Genji is a Saya splinter of the Imperial family. And off you go. But I do need to emphasize, even for the richest people, life was still short and often unpleasant. That's just because Watanabe no Tsuno was a special little boy who didn't want to go by Minamoto no Tsuno. Incredible. I love that for him. So, fire would go through and destroy the Imperial capital about every 6 years. Fleas and parasites were all the time. But hey, the architecture goes crazy. Not much architecture survives from the Heian period, but rebuilding the estates always meant you stayed cutting edge. It always meant that you were pretty good at building stuff. And so you get a lot of cool fashion, you get a lot of cool hats, you get a lot of cool architecture that doesn't survive to the present day, and you get a lot of literature and gossip and everything. But yes, they are political rivals in that they are both retainers of different branches of the Fujiwara family. Sei Shonagon was in the one retired empress's envoy. Murasaki Shikibu was in a different retired empress's envoy. Oops. You've been reading Takasue's daughter recently. Your travelogue is very good. Probably like the second tier of fame after these two. So, along with, was it the collection of ancient poems is the English translation? It's a male author, but really good collection of waka poetry. Of course, the analog to elite culture in the Heian is common culture in the Heian. Oof. What can you say but yikes? It sucks so freaking much. Like, what the heck? You have unfurnished or very barely furnished wooden stilt houses or dug-in houses. Nothing's painted. Everything's taxed. Everyone's living on the edge of starvation all the time. There's always a risk of tax collectors or bandits ruining your day. It sucks so much. In order to understand why it sucks so much, we kind of have to understand a little bit about the farming. There is very little really good arable land in Japan. And the infrastructure to make something sustainably arable doesn't exist yet. So rice cultivation is done basically by mountain runoff streams. The problem with mountain runoff streams is that you are on the side of a mountain. Because you are on the side of the mountain, water goes by, the water is flowing really fast. Really fast. And so, if you don't have complex irrigation to slow down that water and trap it, you're going to have seasonal flooding, and then your rice field won't stay wet. It's going to flood and wash out your crops, and then it's going to dry up, and the crops that didn't get washed out are going to die because they didn't stay wet long enough. So, mass death and starvation events are an annual occurrence. At the end of winter, every year, there is a mass death event in Heian, Japan. This is exacerbated, right, by the overall climate. So, the Heian, Japan overlaps with what is known in historical climatology as the medieval warm period. The medieval warm period is really, really good for population growth in Europe, and it means that there is epidemic or famines every 3 to 4 years in Japan. If you were poor, the odds of dying of disease in your teens or 20s was extraordinarily high. The central imperial government is deeply unwilling and incapable of dealing with this. In the early Heian period, we see one of the goals of the tax collecting is to build up an imperial reserve of rice to sort of balance out some of these poor harvest events. And so we see widespread distribution of imperial reserves into the provinces in the 800s. By the 900s, those reserves don't exist. And so the imperial government becomes both incapable and unwilling to actually deal with this. And so you just died. The account on screen is from a petition from Owari province in 988 AD, where some of the local villages, plus the local temple, all got together to write a very long, like 25-item petition detailing the abuses of power of Fujiwara no Motonaga. These include harsh taxation, embezzlement of silk, the taxing rice fields that were set aside for the maintenance of imperial waypoints. It's failing to fund the temple, etc., etc. So, this is descriptive in how evocative it is. One of those points is regarding the transportation of tribute in the winter months to the imperial capital. During the winter months and agricultural season, not 1 month or even 10 days pass without frequent transports of goods to the capital. There is a distance of 10 post stations, which is not that many, but enough. Owari is close to Kyoto. From our province to the capital, and on the way back to the province, the porters have to climb steep peaks high in the clouds. Therefore, the porters suffer from inflammation of their shoulders caused by the shoulder stick as they carry their cargo and their grief. The animals' hooves are injured, and with pain they carry the cargo on their pack saddles. The porters are not even able to return to their home province, because by then the food supply is depleted, and their strength exhausted. The animals are close to collapse as the grass has dried out and the water is frozen. Being rich in this period meant being constantly susceptible to disease, fire, and pests. Being poor in this period meant all of those things, plus barely having enough food to feed yourself, much less your family, much less deal with bandits and greedy provincial nobles, and heavy, heavy taxation. And this dude, thank you for that gift sub to Zoe Alden. So, banditry. Is it a surprise that bandits are an ever-present threat in this period? Piracy within the inner Japanese Sea, banditry across the whole world, and ronin, or wandering warriors not particularly assigned to anybody, who would be hired as tax collectors, were ever-present threats. we shouldn't... They coexist. Both emerge in this period, Space Nerd. We shouldn't be surprised, because banditry is nothing more than a way for people excluded from the social order to circumvent the failings of the state. And my god, did the imperial state fail horribly at mitigating the suffering of the vast majority of people in Heian, Japan. Heian, Japan, in most overviews, is described as a peaceful time, where the focus is on culture, and that is a horrifically blinkered view. Because low-level violence by people who are unbelievably desperate and are looking at the private showen, and seeing the wealth that is being hoarded, even in the provincial elites, and trying to take enough for them to survive. The state apparatus is horrifically abusive, and that forces people into violence. So it's an eternal problem, and lots of folktales exist about retainers and various samurai attacking bandits turned demons, because the Oni, right, or Onryo, are often based on infamous bandits. Hey, Math, you mentioned Shuten Doji. Partially as a consequence of there being bandits all the time, and partially due to the infiltration of historical Shinto belief systems into Buddhist elite practice, there is a massive explosion of folktales adapted in this period. Many of them will focus on a guy named Minamoto no Raiko. But this is overall a world that's just chock full of bakemono, onryo, and other mononoke, supernatural things. The solution on a ritual level is better do an exorcism about it. The solution to various onryo, or other things is better do a violence about it. Shuten Doji is very fun. I very much enjoy this story because the end of it is very silly. The brief summary is that Shuten Doji is out terrorizing people. He's like 50 feet tall, lives up on a mountain, and is real bad. So they send out Minamoto no Raiko and his retainers to go deal with that problem. They manage to get Shuten Doji drunk, he falls asleep, and they cut off his head. Unfortunately for them, Shuten Doji his head can survive for a very long time separated from its body. And it has an extremely strong bite force, such that it can pierce any armor. Minamoto no Raiko solves this problem by pulling a Team Fortress 2 and equipping the Tower of Hats. So he literally just puts on like 5 helmets. So that when Shuten Doji comes at him, he bites through helmets 1, 2, and 3, but can't get through the last couple, and so Minamoto no Raiko does not die. Everyone please clap. There are many, many folktales about Abe no Seimei, Minamoto no Raiko, etc. And that's very good. If I had a nickel for each story in which an Oni's head tried to posthumously eat a guy's head only to be followed by the towering pillar of hats, you would have 2 nickels. Which is not a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice. The collections of folktales from this period are very, very fun. And a lot of these folktales persist in the cultural memory of Japan. So, you see collections of ukiyo-e prints from the 18th and 19th centuries depicting scenes from this very, very, very often. The Pyakyagyo, or the Night Parade of 100 Demons, etc. You also get Kabuki theater. Right, once Kabuki emerges at the end of the 16th century, you get plays that are just retellings of these folktales. And so, this is one of the longest cultural legacies of the Heian, is that a lot of the identifiable folklore ends up being very, very present. Now, there are still lots of things that are not quite clear yet from folktale in this period. For instance, the Tsukumogami, right, the living objects, aren't really a thing yet. They are a Kamakura development. And it's not clear how much of these folktales are elite only or exist across elite and common culture. But there are so many of them, and they're really, really cool. Partly because Edo period censorship prohibits depictions of contemporary events. Yeah, we'll get to that when we talk about the Edo. There's reasons why the Heian period cements in cultural memory for this, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. For now, it is important that it happens. Of course, as you might guess from all these folktales, you have an awful lot of warriors running around free to go do a violence. So, Shoen were effectively independent tax-free estates. That means that they accumulate wealth. That means they're targets for bandits. That means you need to hire people to protect them. Conveniently, by the 900s, the Amishi have been subjugated. You're still sending people out to do skirmishes with them, but broadly speaking, there isn't more territory to go conquer. So you have people whose lives are spent training in military matters, who really don't have a lot going on to occupy their time. Well, there's your solution to a problem. You simply hire a samurai, plus some peasant conscripts, on a mercenary basis, to protect your shogun. What this means is that the Taira and the Minamoto splinter families become problem solvers. Now, the problems they are solving, if they're not bandits and they're not ghosts, they're usually each other. So, Taira no Masakado, as dies in 940, he is the first samurai to revolt in any significant way against the imperial family. He does pretty well for a few years. And then, eventually the imperial family sends his cousin after him. Masakado had killed his cousin's dad a couple years previously, so there was a familial grudge match there. And Taira no Masakado gets killed and beheaded and denied proper burial according to Buddhist traditions. That goes great until it doesn't. And so, eventually his head is shipped back to a province where it's buried properly, but there's folk stories about the head looking around and grimacing, and Masakado's ghost is blamed for an awful lot of stuff for a good long while. Some decades later, we also have Taira no Tadatsune revolt around 1030. Now, that one's mostly significant because the imperial court in Heian-kyo is never threatened by Tadatsune. But the Kanto region gets devastated. It takes decades for the Kanto plain to regain most of its heritability from the imperial family burning things down. So, as we see that transition in Regency rule to more and more individual things, right, the Tatsune Rebellion is solved by someone leveraging their personal resources to raise a bigger army and just squash it. Oops. So, yeah. What we're actually basically seeing is this unfortunate reality that violence as a tool of political pressure against Heian begins to work in the 900s, and you reach a critical mass of people who are good at that. This accelerates in the 1100s, and the Genpei War is really just a culmination of this 150 years of development. I do want to emphasize, sometimes you'll see this framed as provincial warriors fighting against lazy urban courtiers. No. That's not at all what this is. That is such a bad summary of the period. What we are instead seeing is that this is the leveraging of violence to solve friction points in a patchwork web of personal relationships. Personal relationships are political authority. And violence becomes the solution to dealing with a family member you don't like. And so all of that court intrigue and all of that court gossip and all of that tense relationship between a provincial governor, private estate, tribute transportation, and Heian begins to really causing sparks, right? There's a lot of friction here in that web of negotiation. And so increasingly from the 900s to the 1100s, you start to see sparks from those friction points. And it all swirls around the imperial palace. But it is not a clean inside-outside. Yeah. Don't worry, we're going to talk about political assassination soon. But first, we should probably talk about the rise of the retirees. I mentioned that the Fujiwara family would tend to force the reigning emperor into retirement in their 30s. I need to emphasize this again. If you were the Emperor of Japan, your job, formally, lasted from when you were 6 to when you were 30. By the time you're in your 30s, you are forced to abdicate to your 6-year-old son. That means you have a bunch of retired emperors and empresses running around for 20 plus years who are finally experienced politicians in their own right and have a direct family connection to the reigning, to whoever's in charge right now. And is a 10-year-old really going to say no to their dad or their mom or their aunt or their uncle? The same mechanism of family that the Fujiwara family relies on in order to continually manipulate the emperor and secure their own fortunes becomes their undoing as the retired emperors get really good at manipulating their kids in the same way. Oops. Further helping this is that when an emperor retires, they tend to go into a monastery, which gives them a lot of immunity from the increasing political violence of the period. Like, turns out, killing Buddhist monks is bad. Doesn't mean you can't do it. It just means that it's bad for your soul. And, yeah. That means that certain somebodies can run around for a long time and do almost no monastic things, but can still exert a lot of political pressure. See, Fujiwara no Michinaga was playing Galaxy Braid Shogi. He manipulated too close to the sun. And so, without going too much into the details of the intrigue of that, we can finally jump ahead to the 1150s and the run-up to the Genpei War. When we're speaking about the Insei, the cloistered or retired emperors, there is no one more famous than Go Shirakawa. This man is the worst. This man loves to backstab people for no discernible reason. I think he just gets bored. So he is responsible for bringing both the Taira and the Minamoto families, specifically like the one branch of the Minamoto family, into power in Heian, setting them up with positions, making sure that they're comfy cozy, and then using them to assassinate people. The Kamakura Genji. Well, it's not really fair to call them the Kamakura Genji until Yoritomo. Given that Yoshimoto is not in Kamakura. Seiwa. There's the branch, the Seiwa Genji. So, he retires in 1158 at the age of 31 and becomes a monk, which does not slow him down at all. He doesn't die until 1192, but he literally, I think, backstabbed every courtier in the imperial court at some point in another, during his time as Insei. It's very funny, but it's very problematic. Our next power player is the ad break. So I will finish off my coffee here while we let the ads tick on. I feel like it would have thrived in the Roman Senate. Oh, Cicero would have written so many angry speeches about this man. Oh, Cicero would have written so many angry speeches about this man. The Twitter beef goes crazy, AC Esquire. The Twitter beef goes absolutely crazy. Alright. Hopefully that ad break is getting close to done for most people, so let's hop back on in. Our next power player when talking about the Genpei War is, his hobby was backstabbing people. Like, we support geriatrics wrongs. But our next person is Taira no Kiyomori. This man, somehow, is also the worst. He really comes into power. He's already the head of the one branch of the Taira family, but he really comes into power in 1156 when he and Minamoto no Yoshitomo ally with Go Shirakawa in order to suppress a rebellion by another branch of the Minamoto family, known as the Hogen Rebellion. In 1160, relationships between him and Minamoto no Yoshitomo break down, and he kills Yoshitomo. Then, in a rare strategic misplay for the period, he spares Yoshitomo's three sons, Yoritomo, Noriyori, and Yoshitsune. But he banishes them all to different provinces. Yoshitsune heads up to Hiraizumi, Yoritomo heads over to Kamakura. And I don't actually remember where Noriyori goes. Kiyomori then, as thanks for this, Go Shirakawa continues to support him, and he gets appointed Daijo Daijin Chancellor in 1167. Now, he is not an established member of the powerful families of the imperial court. While the Fujiwara are no longer the most powerful family by this time, still, this is a serious bypass of the way in which things worked, and it was still really unusual to put primarily a warrior into this position. Being primarily a warrior, Kiyomori decides that the best thing he should do is start executing his enemies. Go Shirakawa is forced to run away to save his own life. Kiyomori, ignore the typo there, forces the reigning emperor to abdicate in 1179, and ensures that his very young son-in-law, the emperor, I believe it's Antoku, takes the throne. This is a bridge too far. This is Fujiwara behavior, and no one likes this. And so everyone in the provinces, spearheaded by guess who, Go Shirakawa, band together in order to beat up Kiyomori. Antoku is his grandson. It's still, so I'm right on the person, but not on the relationship. I take those. Still, he forces Antoku to take the throne. Nobody liked that. Unfortunately for everyone, Taira Kiyomori gets a severe illness, gets like an 107-degree fever and dies before things really kick off. So it leaves his own son to get obliterated by the Seiwa Genji. And so we should, at the end, recognize Minamoto no Yoritomo. This man is, you guessed it, the worst. He grows up after being spared by Kiyomori and exiled to the Hojo clan in Kanagawa, in the city of Kamakura. He is raised in captivity. The trick is he's also wildly charismatic and talented in basically anything he sets his mind to. And so he ends up marrying Masako, Hojo Masako, the daughter of the head of the clan. So now, instead of being a captor, he's basically like their top guy. Is there anyone who isn't the worst here? No. Next question. Yoritomo is very charismatic. He's a talented warrior in general in his own right, but his brothers are better than him. And so he, sends missives to his brothers, and says, "Hey, we should avenge our father's killing, and beat up the Taira." And his brothers are like, "Hell yeah, we should." And Go Shirakawa is like, "Hey, I miss being in Heian. I'll help siphon funds to you if you want to beat up the Taira." And Yoritomo was like, "Hell yeah, I'll take that money." And we're off to the races. So between 1181 and 1185, they go beat up the Taira. Also, before going to beat up the Taira, they take time to raid the lands of their cousin, Minamoto no Yoshinaka, while he's busy beating up the Taira. Hey, look. Sometimes you gotta recognize that your cousin's gonna be your next big threat, and the enemy of my enemy is not my friend. In fact, my friends are also my enemies. So, I will say, Minamoto no Yoritomo has a bit of a paranoia problem, which, given how badly things go for his dynasty, frankly fair and reasonable. But, unfortunately, as soon as the war is done and he installs himself in Heian, he turns around and says, "Yoshitsune, my buddy, my man, my guy. Time for you to go." So Yoshitsune, and his servant Benkei, end up fleeing to Hiraizumi. Remember that place? The northern Fujiwara? Not those northern Fujiwara. end up sheltering the Yoshitsune and look for a while like they're going to be able to hold out, because again, Hiraizume is functionally independent from Heian. It has a massive amount of resources leveraging for its own defense. Unfortunately, the son of the head of the Northern Fujiwara betrays everyone and attacks Yoshitsune at night, forcing him to commit seppuku. And or flee to Mongolia and become Genghis Khan. Look, the 19th century scholarship was whack, okay? Minamo no Yoritomo, is officially appointed, Sei Taishogun, in 1192. Okay, officially, it's given to him by the Emperor Go-Toba. But, Go-Toba was 12 in 1192. So, Yoritomo appoints himself that position. And, yeah. So, welcome to the stage set. We're gonna backpedal from 1192 very briefly, to talk about the actual war. The best way to sum up the war is everybody loses. So, the Taira clan are based primarily on Shikoku and Kyushu. The Minamoto clan, the Yoshinaka forces, are basically able to drive the Taira out of Heian extremely quickly in 1181, and are busy winning wars all over here. Yoritomo's forces just sack all of this. Sack everything, and when they're done sacking all of this, finish sacking all of this. And then the Northern Fujiwara are up here, hanging out, having a good time. Don't worry about them. So, it's kind of a stomp. The Taira get wiped off the face of the map. There are no Taira at the end of this, and there will really be no organized Taira-clad success or political authority after this point. They're gone. They're donezo. Also, pretty much the entire Minamoto family gets obliterated. Yoritomo is the only one left. Noriyori dies in battle, and Yoshitsune gets assassinated, and Yoshinaka gets beat to a pulp. So, you know, don't worry about it. This will be fine for everyone and nothing bad will happen. So, in 1185, Yoshitsune briefly, right? Congratulations, we've done this. So you have Yoshitsune and Yoritomo, going like, well, we won. Now what? Go Shirakawa! Yeah, that guy, because he's the worst, starts giving Yoshitsune honors, being the, governor of Omi and the Iyo provinces. Yoritomo doesn't like this, starts manipulating to have him assassinated. Yoshitsune gets wind of this, flees to Hiraizumi, and eventually gets successfully assassinated. Yoritomo stays in Heian for a while. In 1192, appoints himself that title from way back when. The subjugation of, the general in charge of the subjugation of the shrimp barbarians. The Seihei Shogun. As a side note, Go-Toba, right, officially signs the paperwork. He's 12, he doesn't have any say in the matter. Go-Toba is another one who's a pretty effective as retired emperor. He ends up leading a rebellion against the, Kamakura shogunate in 1221. So that's pretty cool. Good for him. Yoshitsune then returns to Kamakura and, retires to a Buddhist monastery in 1199. 2 days later, he's dead. His son, Yoshie, rules fairly effectively for a couple of years. However, he dies fairly young, and makes the ever so brilliant decision of splitting authority between his two sons. This has big Carolingian energy to me. And it goes about as well as the Carolingians do. If you know your European history, right, Charlemagne, his son Louis the Pious, is a fairly effective single ruler. Louis the Pious has 3 sons, Charles, Louis, and Lothar, and splits authority between the 3 of them. Soon as Louis is gone, they civil war about it and create the foundations for France, Belgium, and Germany. This, pretty much the exact same thing happens to Yoshie's sons. They both get assassinated when they're young. And it is actually Yoritomo's wife, Hojo Masako, and her father, Hojo Tokimasa, who actually win the succession crisis. And so the Kamakura shogunate is actually the rule of the Hojo clan, the in-laws of Minamoto no Yoritomo. So, literally everyone who's fighting this war loses. Good job, guys. Great work. Great work, team. Great work, team. We did real good. Glad we destroyed a lot of farmland, made life even worse for the peasants, and completely uprooted the political order for that. Did you see that one coming, honestly? GG? Yeah. 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 So, hot take. The Genpei War really doesn't matter that much. For how much attention the Genpei War gets, it really isn't that interesting or important. I feel no need to go into detail about the order of the battles and exactly what happened when, because it doesn't fucking matter. Fundamentally, the social structure of the late Heian had been modified, altered, shifted, and weakened so many times that it was fundamentally unsustainable. The most interesting thing about the Genpei War is that it's the spark that actually turned into a flame. While Tadatsune's just didn't. It's not that Tadatsune's couldn't, it's that Tadatsune's happened to not. So, exactly. So, most of the interesting things I think you can say about the Genpei War and the end of the Heian period are in the realms of cultural memory and memory studies. Because there's a lot of things. The most probably important single thing, there are kind of 2 most important things, I guess. The Kamakura and the Ashikaga shogunates both claim descent and legitimacy from Minamoto no Yoritomo, who's the guy in purple in this print. Additionally, pseudo-histories like the Heika Monogatari and other folktales about Minamoto no Yoshitsune create legendary heroes that are well remembered in Japan to this day. The people involved in the Genpei War are such well-developed characters that you can tell a lot of stories about them, and that means that they get told a lot. Again, the Edo period has a censorship against talking about current events. The Heian period and the Genpei War become great ways to tell stories about great heroes who are cooler and better than the way things were now. You also have the loss of the imperial regalia that had been in the imperial family's possession for some 700 years at that point, etc., etc., etc. So, there's a lot of interesting memory studies, but if you actually try and strip that away and look at what the social and political significance is, I really don't think it's that high. I really don't think there's that much interesting to say. For the most part, it basically says which of these military families in eastern Honshu is going to become the big dog on the stage, and it proves once and for all the thing that we had identified 200 years or 150 years earlier, which is that fighting and military structures and the private estate outside of Heian is where real political authority and bureaucratic effectiveness is going to lie. And that's where it will continue to lie for the rest of Japanese history, with only a couple of exceptions. Hello, Bria. You came in right at the end of the Japanese, just the history, talking about the Heian period. But these were some of the sources I used while writing this. I do particularly recommend Heian Japan Centers and Peripheries. It is not good for a general overview of the Heian period, but if you're looking to dive deeper and really complicate the traditional understanding, it is fantastic. I also particularly liked Melinda Varner's teaching about Heian Japan, partially because it has a really, really robust set of its own resources available, present, and looking really good. Right, it's also fairly narrower, devastating. It is short, sharp, between small arms. Yeah, hundreds of people, not thousands. This is, for being a giant war, these armies are like 200 people each. It's really just you and some friends going and having a fight about it. Like, chat, the lot of us right now could form a reasonably effective center of an army unit in the Genpei War. Like, there's 27 of us, if you count me, across the chats. Like, we could do pretty good for ourselves. You wanna go, like, beat up Heian? I bet we can take them. I'll get the Naginatas, let's do it. Hell yeah. If we're combat, well, a couple of you are. See, Bree has a sword. Wolfie has several swords. Wolfie, how's your katana work? I know you mostly do long swords. How's your katana work? That's good enough, right? That's good enough, right? But yeah. So, can I sew our silly hats? Hell yeah. We desperately need silly hats and cooking stuff. And also, someone has to write poetry about us to make sure when we inevitably lose, that we're remembered as the cool people that we were. Okay? Who's in charge of... Can you also be in charge of at least organizing the writing stuff down? Make sure you embellish us to sound very cool. You can do the calligraphy. Awesome. Based. Now, if you're trained in swords, I need you on swords. You can multitask, but you understand I do need you on swords when we do this. Awesome. Awesome. Wait, we're overstocked on chroniclers now. Wait, we've got like 5 chroniclers now. Wait. We're gonna not have swords here if we're not careful. If I should become crab, think only this of me. Amazing. Noriko Reido has an interesting section in her book on Oni folklore about the Heika Monogatari, sort of the origin of the swole provincial warriors beat up the overfed nerds in the capital. I love that for us. I love that for all of us. Nothing bad can possibly happen here. So, if you are on YouTube, thank you so much for hanging out. This stream is going to end, but another stream will be starting up in just a couple of minutes to check out more history game demos. Because we have a lot more history game demos in NextFest, in Steam NextFest to worry about, and we want to get through as many of those as we can. So this stream will be going down exactly long enough for me to refill on drinks, and then we will be right back, so do keep an eye on this page for more of that. That is going down purely for VOD reasons, so that anyone can watching this later will just get the VOD for themselves. So YouTube chat, thank you so much for hanging out. We will see you all very shortly. Twitch chat, don't go anywhere, because you're gonna get snails while I go refill on fluids, and then we'll have some demos. You will be going to bed, but you look forward to the Muromachi period PowerPoint already. We're going to make that shorter. I think we're going to align together the Kamakura and Muromachi periods. But I should say, next up on Year of the Weeb, starting up at the start of November, is going to be Ghosts of Tsushima. Because we're entering the Kamakura period, and what better of a way to do it than by focusing exclusively on the failed Mongol invasion and none of the rest of the details of the Kamakura period. At the same time, because the, Ghost of Tsushima has an interesting TM, interesting derogatory take on the Mongols, we are going to be playing Windstorm, because that comes out at the start of November, and it's going to have a much better take on the 13th century Mongols. And so, yeah, you can look forward to that coming up real soon. But yeah. So if you like the Japanese history stuff, do make sure you're followed or subscribed for much more of that in the not-so-distant future. Otherwise, ciao, and we will see you two folks again next time. And by next time, I mean please stick around. We'll be back live in like 5 minutes. Okay, see you soon. Bye! Alright, Twitch chat. It's just us now. Congratulations.